First of all, I scratched a scab here, so that's what that's about. And second, we're watching a video on the Alcatraz escape. I personally think that the guys, uh, um, at least one of them, survived.
This week on Buzzfeed Unsolved, we cover the thrilling escape from the famed Alcatraz prison. The inmates who pulled this off did so by executing an ingenious and daring plan, and who doesn't love a good prison break, right?
I do. Will there be tunnels?
You could say there was a tunnel. I guess if you were sitting in a cell for a long time, you would be able to come up with pretty cool things to escape.
Yeah.
That being said, the things that they did come up with, I was impressed by.
Yeah.
But I'm easily impressed.
Well, I guess tell your story.
Okay, yeah.
Formerly a military base, Alcatraz Island opened as a federal maximum security prison in 1934. The prison was nicknamed The Rock due to the fact that the prison sits on a 22-acre island about a mile and a quarter away from the city of San Francisco. Because of this, the prison gained a reputation as being inescapable, with water surrounding the prison hovering around 48 degrees Fahrenheit to 54 degrees Fahrenheit
Let's think
all
about
year, along with formidable currents pulling
Alcatraz's distance from San Francisco is about the same length as between my house and my high school.
strongly out to sea, leading up to low tide.
San Francisco is very cold.
It's very cold. And I have very
Yeah.
delicate Southern California skin.
The
Same here.
coldest winter of my life was a summer in San Francisco.
Okay. I thought you were going to go into your typical Midwestern people know winter and cold. and all that.
Midwestern people do know. I'll tell you.
Oh, Jesus
I'll
Christ.
Tell you.
Okay, no, it's fine. We don't have to go into
We
it.
know snow.
I'm very happy for you. What a feather in all your caps. So, shall we move on?
If you must.
Great.
As time went on, the prison would fall into disrepair, and the budget to fix things was limited.
That
this would
sucks.
become an important factor in the inmates' escape. So without
Yeah,
further
it was
ado,
becoming a shithole.
let's meet
Well, even more of a
the
shithole
escape
than a prison is.
First
I
up,
don't blame
we
for
have the Anglin
escaping.
brothers, John William Anglin and his younger brother Clarence Anglin, both in their early 30s at the time of the escape. The brothers were serving time for robbing a bank together.
I wouldn't mind being in a jail cell with my bro.
Yeah, the thing is, like, being in prison, obviously not ideal.
Yeah.
But you got your bro there with
You
you,
got your
and they
bro.
actually were next door to each other.
That's very fun.
That's very fun.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's a big bonding
I
moment.
wonder if one of them got the letter like, ooh, where are you going? And I was like,
Like
I'm
it's-
going to Alcatraz. And he was like, me too.
They just jump up and down. Like they got accepted to college together.
Next, we have Frank Morris, in his mid-30s at the time of the escape, who had been abandoned as a young child, put in foster care and run away, and was then in and out of prisons since he was just 13 years old. He was also
That's
serving
kinda
time for a
sad.
bank robbery. The final member of the crew is Alan West, age 33 at the time of the escape. West began serving time by the age of 14 and bounced around various federal prisons. Our crew of escapees established. Let's jump into the inception of the escape. It's said that West first approached Morris with a plan to escape in early 1960. West apparently knew of a ventilator cover above cell block B that might not be sealed over with concrete, as some of the other vents had been. If true, this could provide
heard
them
the
with a way to
cell-
get
I
onto
heard
the
the
roof
vents
of the
covered
prison
with
from the
cement.
inside. West also began working with the cell house
Does it
maintenance
break
crew,
out?
which gave him insight into the building.
But if covering up a vent would be like bad for ventilation, why not just cover like? Why not just make modify the vents so they're smaller? You don't have to cover the whole damn thing up. People need to breathe.
Structure, layout, and weaknesses. By September 1961, the Anglin brothers, Morris and West, all had requested moves to cells that were close to each other in cell block B, directly under the unsecured vent cover. All cell moves were approved.
This goes
Wow.
back to my thinking that prison, maybe back then, or maybe in this particular prison, didn't seem so bad. You just put in a request, and they're like, "Oh, you want to move?
Yeah, I
You
mean,
want to be with your pals?
there's a.
Yeah, sure."
I mean, the
I
thought
mean, there
is
was
like
a battle
this
of
is
They should have just
Alcatraz.
asked to leave.
I think this is maybe a lesson in humility for this prison, the prison guards and the prison warden.
Yeah.
Obviously, this prison has been thought of as this fortress of security. It's thought of as unescapable. It's surrounded by water.
Oh,
What's
so
the
there's
worst?
an element of hubris here. They,
well, yeah. What's the worst they're gonna do? Do what you want. It doesn't matter because you're never gonna escape here.
In terms of who planned what, the details are a bit murky, but one thing is for sure. The plan that the 4 men would execute was undoubtedly bold and ingenious. That being said, let's break down the plan, starting with Phase 1, Deception. With Alcatraz, it wasn't just about escaping the prison walls, as it was also about making it back to the mainland and avoiding capture in that process. In order to prevent that, the men knew they needed a head start. To accomplish this, the men created painted dummy heads made from
that
a
is, like,
plaster-like
smart.
mix of soap, concrete, and other materials, and complete with human hair. They laid the heads in their beds to fool the guards. Sure enough, on June 12th, on the morning following the escape, when the 7 a.m. bell went off to wake the prisoners, guards discovered that the escapees appeared to still be asleep in their beds. It wasn't until one guard reached into Morris's cell and pushed the head, only for it to roll away and strike the ground,
man.
that the guards
That
realized
scared
something
him.
was wrong. To this day, the dummy head that struck the ground still has the damage that resulted from this fall. It's unknown who came up with the idea to create dummy heads. However, Clarence worked as a barber and had access to human hair trimmings. Either way, Phase 1 Deception was a success.
If I were that guard and I reached into that bed, oh, wake up, sir. You're missing, or something. You know, his head rolls out.
Yeah.
First, I'd scream. I'd go, ah!
I don't know my own strength. I just
And then I'd
decapitated
just
him.
stand there and go,
Oh.
they did it.
Very good.
Very good.
Very good.
I would be angry if the craftsmanship weren't so good.
It's very
But
good.
if I pick it up and I see the human hair, I'm thinking, well, they really pulled out all the stops here. I am
Exactly.
not a fool.
This brings us to Phase 2, Breakout. After laying the dummies in their beds, the men went to work on busting out of their cells. All 4 of the men's cells had 5-inch by 9.5-inch ventilation grates in the back of their cells. Perhaps due to his time on maintenance, West may have known that the wall surrounding the grate was less than 6 inches thick, making it possible for each man to expand the hole in their cell to fit through. For months, each of the escapees had drilled small, closely spaced holes around the cover of the ventilation grates. For this, they used crude handmade tools, like spoons stolen from the kitchen, and a drill made from a vacuum cleaner motor. These holes made it possible for them to remove the entire small section of the wall around the air vents, which they then kept covered up with their musical instruments and with fake covers made of cardboard.
I'm also not that handy, so retrofitting a vacuum motor, turning it into a drill, I don't know if I'd be able to think
I
of
mean,
that.
that's like impressive.
I don't know. So they're essentially just perforating it.
Yeah, they're priming it by making little holes. They're making the wall a little bit weaker so that they could just push through this wall.
And this is out of view of the guard?
So it's not out of view, but this prison allowed an hour called I think it was called happy hour, where the inmates
Everybody
would
gets margaritas.
no one gets margaritas. But the inmates who played musical instruments were allowed to play their instruments during this hour.
What is this prison? Everybody talks, oh, the Rock, you don't want to go to the Rock.
That's true. It sounds like the
Oh, the
prison.
happy hour at the Rock is only 3 times a day.
It sounds like the prison from Paddington 2.
Don't forget your loot.
Yeah, under the cover of all this shitty music playing, they were probably able to do some drilling.
These
Yeah.
holes allowed them to crawl through to a utility corridor located directly behind their cells that was typically left unguarded. From there, they were able to climb up to a hidden landing area directly above their cell block, where they had been working in secret for several months. Some or all of the escapees had been given permission at some point to do maintenance work on this landing area. In fact, to this day, you can still see where West actually completed part of the painting job. Apparently, West had even convinced the guards to allow him to hang blankets that concealed his work because it was sending dust cascading down to the ground level. In reality, he was actually using blankets to hide the work that was really being done up there. This concealed landing area became the escapees' secret workshop. They even built and used a primitive periscope to take turns as lookout. In the workshop, they were able to build the aforementioned dummies, tools, and other items they'd use to escape. It's worth noting that on the night of the escape, West never made it to this landing spot due to the fact that he was unable to break through the last portion of the wall around his ventilation grate.
Oh no.
Consequently, West was left behind. From the landing, The ceiling was about 30 feet directly overhead, and the men were able to climb to the ceiling via the pipes and reach an air vent that they had previously pried off in preparation for their escape. Experts believe that a sound reportedly heard around 10:30 p.m. was the sound of the air vent cover being pushed off on the roof, and this marks the approximate time the escapees would have reached the roof. They then climbed down from the roof via a pipe next to the back of their cell block, climbed the 15-foot fence, and made their way to the north shore of the island, which brings us to the next phase. Phase 3, escaping the island. In their workshop, the inmates had built life preservers and a 6x14-foot rubber raft, all made from prison-issue raincoats. They'd gathered over 50 raincoats for the job, possibly stitching them together using sewing machines in the clothing or glove shops. They even vulcanized the rubber raincoats by holding the seams up to the heat from the steam pipes, an idea they'd gotten from a popular mechanics issue. The raft was inflated
that is, like,
using
impressive.
a converted musical instrument, a concertina, ordered by Morris back in April.
Do you think every day for 50 days they just kept going, lost my raincoat again?
I mean, there was a
49th time in a row.
There
Can
was
you believe it?
a lot of raincoats.
I guess, yeah.
And I guess they weren't keeping inventory of them. I'm guessing that they
Clearly
got a
not.
fair amount of poop on them. They're like, all right, throw that in the trash.
Ew.
And just walking by, taking them slow. Where do they oh, I guess in the workshop.
You know what I find with government employees, they're always thrilled to waste the money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, hey, that's on the government's dime. So
Yeah.
if you're a prisoner and you're like, I lost a raincoat, they're probably like, yeah, hey, have more. I don't care. It's not mine.
Yeah. And
That's coming from Uncle Sam's pocket.
you're not
pal.
taking from the guard's personal stash
Yeah.
of raincoats.
Yeah.
Oh, but 50 does seem like an inordinate amount to gather.
They vulcanized them on the steamy pipes.
Off a popular mechanics issue.
I love it.
The plan was to sail across San Francisco Bay in their raft to Angel Island, about 2 miles north of Alcatraz Island. From there, they would sail again, this time across Raccoon Strait, about a half-mile wide, which would then bring them to the mainland. There, they would steal a car, as well as clothing, according to West, who would later inform the FBI about a good deal of the plan. Once the men were discovered missing, Alcatraz went into lockdown as a search began. Guards quickly found the secret workshop, the hole in the ceiling, and
Wonder if they
footprints
were
on the
impressed.
roof and at the bottom of the pipe they climbed down. The FBI joined the case, as would the Coast Guard and Bureau of Prison Authorities, in what would
Yeah, the
be a
prison fucked up.
wide-scale search. However, the escapees, as well as their raft, were never seen again. Even though we know the 3 men made it off of Alcatraz Island, what happened to the 3 men after that remains a mystery. That being said, let's get into the theories, of which there are only 2: that the men escaped and survived, or that they perished in the
I
journey
honestly
over to the
think that at
mainland.
least one of them
Let's
survived.
start with the latter. The bay's waters are known for being frigid, and there is a strong current that could have worked against the escapees. Experts point out that the trio's goal of taking the raft north to Angel Island would have been extremely difficult at this time, especially given that they had paddles but no rudder. Additionally, results of a reenactment of the escape carried out by Dutch scientists in a piece for PBS, in which they built a raft similar to the one the escapees used, found that 2 of the men would have to work to keep the raft inflated, leaving only 1 to paddle. The weather would have been about 47 degrees Fahrenheit when the men made it outside the prison.
That's
The water
gross.
is said to have been 54 degrees Fahrenheit. If the raft had sunk or the men had gone overboard into the water, they would probably have only lasted 2 hours before starting to lose consciousness, according to author Jolene Babiak.
I tell you what, you ever looked out into the waters in that bay?
I've looked out to the waters at night in the ocean. It's scary.
But that bay in particular,
I
don't
can't-
like the look of it.
The ocean is scary in the daytime.
It's scary enough, but that bay, scarier than the ocean.
I can't speak to
Rocky.
that.
It's rocky and it's cold.
The only time I've ever looked at that bay has been in a very fun context. I was watching a group of seals fight each other.
Oh, that's
And it
fun.
was really fun. They were slapping each other away, and then
Yeah.
one of them fell off. And you
But
made a
imagine
little-
that if you're trying to escape and a seal hops up on your boat, starts slapping you like, you know?
Yeah,
That's
you know,
not ideal.
I don't think that's ideal. It'd be cute, but it'd be like, come on, man, gotta escape. Very funny. Meet you back on the shore. We'll do
Yeah.
this again sometime.
Yeah.
On June 12th, bits of wood resembling a handmade paddle were found in the water near Angel Island. The pieces were identified as belonging to the escapees. On June 14th, bags made from raincoats were found halfway between Alcatraz and Angel Island. These bags contained irrefutable evidence that they had belonged to the escapees. Photos of the Anglins and their family, 9 pieces of paper with a list of people to contact on the outside, and a letter written to Clarence Anglin. Many point to these personal items as evidence that the journey was ill-fated, as these would have not been items easily given up. On June 15th, a homemade life vest was found floating near Cronkite Beach. A second life vest was discovered on June 22nd, no more than 100 yards from the eastern coast of Alcatraz Island. Its ties were still knotted. All 3 of the men would have set out with very little money, so the
What
fact
about
that
the
the
third-
hordes of authorities
what
on the
about
case
the
never found
third
a
life
shred of
vest?
evidence of any thefts or holdups tied to Morris or the Anglins for food, clothing, or transportation made it seem unlikely that they made it to the mainland alive. The FBI states that they never found any credible evidence, either in the US or abroad, that the men lived. In mid-July 1962, about 6 weeks after the escape, a Norwegian shipping freighter, the SS Norefell, spotted a body in the ocean about 20 miles away from the Golden Gate Bridge. However, they did not call in the sighting
Why?
and did not report it until fall,
Why?
when they returned to San Francisco, and the body was never recovered.
Look, it's a dead guy.
Oh well.
I guess if it's a freighter, I mean, one, you should report it, but if it's a freighter, I can't imagine they can really stop.
Look,
a
I get
freighter.
not
Also,
s-
you know, time is money.
Yeah, sure. I get not stopping, but a little
Call it
phone
in.
call,
Call
little
it
phone
in.
call. Like, hey, I
Yeah.
think I saw a dead body.
Yeah.
And because the body was never recovered, we can't tell if it's one of these 3 men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, shit happens in the sea, I guess.
Though, there is plenty of credence to our second theory, that the escapees survived. Morans and the Anglin brothers had a raft to help them navigate the waters, which many people have successfully been able to swim before without the benefit of a raft or life jackets. A triathlon is held each year in which participants complete a 1.5-mile swim in the same waters around the same time of year that the escape occurred. Participants do say that the current, choppy waters, and wind are major factors to contend with. But according to Jeff Harp, a security analyst for CBS San Francisco who worked with the FBI for over 20 years and goes for swims in the San Francisco Bay, he doesn't know of any contestants in the triathlon who haven't been able to complete the swim. Furthermore, most of the bodies of those who drown in the bay will float after a few days. But
Yeah.
despite extensive searches, the fugitives' bodies were never found.
They never floated up.
U.S. Marshal Michael Dyke has run a simulation with help from the Coast Guard that determined the escapees could have survived in the water for 2.5 hours at least if the raft plan failed. The same Dutch scientists who carried out the reenactment of the escape also created a computer model, which they presented in 2014, that could recreate the conditions in the water on the night of the escape. The model found that there was a very narrow window between 11:30 p.m. and midnight, during which the trio would have needed to launch their raft in order to have a chance of making it to land. And since the inmates may have made it to the roof by 10:30 p.m., this window seems possible. Though, even then, they would have had to let the currents carry them to Horseshoe Bay, northeast of the Golden Gate Bridge, rather than trying to reach Angel Island. The model also suggested that items left at the shoreline near Horseshoe Bay would drift back towards Angel Island, where some of
Yeah.
the escapees' items were recovered once the tides reversed.
Like, maybe
and while the
they-
Dutch scientists' real-life recreation
Maybe there were like bags of stuff that they wouldn't leave behind accidentally got knocked overboard. And they couldn't like get them. Like that could have been what happened.
of the escape did not work, as they were unable to withstand the currents and bring the raft to land. They still got fairly close to Golden Gate Bridge in a little over an hour aboard the raft. One of the scientists conceded he still believes the escapees might have been able to pull it off given the rush of adrenaline and need to survive.
Also, one thing I'm going to point out here, I don't know how accurate this test is. If you have scientists doing the paddling themselves in the boat.
Oh, those fucking Poindexters.
I feel like maybe have some guys that are a little closer to the dudes who were escaping.
Hold on, I'm having technical issues again. This is picking up my audio. but not
Yeah.
I guess I am generalizing that scientists
what? Oh,
are.
come-
Dudes who were escaping.
Why can't I hear? Did I somehow accidentally mute this? Because I can't hear what they are saying. I'm just gonna reboot the page.
Believes the escapees might have been able to pull it off, given the
Yep, can hear. I think I
rush of adrenaline and need to
Hear it.
survive.
Also, one thing I'm going to point out here, I don't know how accurate this test is. If you have scientists doing the paddling themselves in the boat.
Oh, those fucking Poindexters.
maybe they do.
I
Maybe
just
they're
like,
buff.
I mean,
maybe
I feel
they're
like
working out.
maybe have
Did it
some
say if they did
guys that
working
are a
out?
little closer to the dudes who were escaping.
Yeah.
I guess I am generalizing that scientists are meek individuals, but I'm just saying that if these are inmates, hardened criminals that are trying to survive, I don't know if this is the best people for the job.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
scientists could go to the gym, right?
I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Chris Pratt in the Jurassic World film.
He's not a scientist. He's
I
also
thought he
a
was.
fictional
Isn't he a
character.
paleontologist?
His name is Owen Grady. Whoa there, Blue.
Oh, Jesus
Everybody
Christ.
loves Blue, a great character.
David Widner, the
Oh,
nephew
I
of
gotta
the
see if
England
Owen
brothers,
Grady was a
has said that his
scientist.
uncle Robert, one of John and Clarence's older brothers, confessed on his deathbed to his sisters, quote, that they didn't have to worry about their brothers, that he had been in touch with them and they were okay, end quote. Widner added that his grandmother, who would have been John and Clarence Anglin's mother, would sometimes receive roses with her son's signatures on the card following the 1962 escape. Multiple family members of John and Clarence Anglin have claimed over the years at family funerals that they have noticed mysterious women wearing veils and or
Owen Grady is like a U.S. Navy veteran and animal behavioral scientist. So yeah, he was a scientist.
heavy makeup, which could have been the undercover Anglin brothers coming to pay their respects. In 2015, a History Channel show claimed that a photo taken of two men in Brazil 13 years after the escape depicted brothers John and Clarence Anglin alive. The photograph came from Fred Brizzi, a childhood friend of the Anglin brothers, who turned it over to the family sometime in the 1990s. Brizzi's story is that he was on a trip in Brazil when he happened to run into John and Clarence at a bar. Brizzi has since passed away. Many in the Anglin family have held onto the belief that John and Clarence survived the escape. They also believe the photo shows John and Clarence. An expert connected with the History Channel show concluded that the photo showed the Anglin brothers. The U.S. Marshal's Office investigated the claim. Their experts do not believe the photo depicts John and Clarence. However, they acknowledge that a solid determination isn't really possible given the age and wear to the photo and the fact that the subjects are wearing sunglasses.
Their execution of this plan was so impressive that I know it's technically not legal to do this, but just give them a pass.
Yeah.
Also, even let's say they survived the escape.
Yeah.
The fact that they didn't get into trouble for the next 50 years means jail worked for them.
Jail worked.
They received penance, and now they've stuck to the plan. They had a lot of conviction,
Yeah.
and you know what? They deserve to be free at that point.
yeah.
I mean, prison truly should be about reforming the soul of a man.
And these folks, all they did was drink Caprinos in Brazil.
As for the aftermath of the escape, Alan West, the inmate left behind, cooperated with officials in the search, finishing serving his sentence across 3 different prisons following Alcatraz, and was released in 1967. But he remained free for only 1 year before landing himself concurrent sentences of 5 years, 1 to 3 years, and life for grand larceny and robbery. He died in 1978. Alcatraz shut down in March 1963, less than a year after the Anglin Morris escape. The FBI officially closed their case on the 1962 escape from Alcatraz on December 31st, 1979, over 15 years after their investigation began. However, they add, quote, "It's one mystery we'd all like to solve," end quote. The case is expected to remain open with federal marshals until either the fugitives are arrested, evidence of their deaths is found, or the fugitives reach 99 years of age. In the end, nobody truly knows if the enterprising bunch of Alcatraz escapees completed their journey, or if their midnight voyage was ill-fated. For now, the case remains unsolved.
I still think at least one of them survived. What do you guys think? I'll see you guys in the next one.